Welcome to the Purple Warriors podcast. I'm Ali Sugars, your host, and thank you so much for joining me. This podcast is about raising awareness for domestic abuse by allowing survivors to share their own stories and journeys to recovery. It's also about assisting fellow survivors to give you practical yet powerful information that will help you on the road to your recovery. I hope you enjoy the show.
So being July now, the official start of the new financial year, I thought that what better way to begin with the topic on everybody's lips at the moment, and of course that is finances and money. So today's topic is all about managing your money no matter what the budget you're on. And I'd like to introduce my very first guest on the show. And today we have Sarah Riemann, who is mentor, speaker and coach. And Sarah provides financial business solutions that save you time, money and stress. So Sarah, welcome.
Hi Ali, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So Sarah, before we get into some juicy questions, tell us a bit about you, about your story and your background in finance.
Okay, well, Ali, I started off my accounting degree back in 1999 and I was pregnant with my first child. That was my sort of journey into accounting. And what did I do? I actually chose accounting. I didn't just fall into it like some people do. I actually, at the ripe old age of 23, chose to start my accounting degree, and it took me 6 years to finish it. But prior to that, I just worked in supermarkets, worked in cafes and retail outlets. I wasn't qualified. I actually dropped out of school in year 10, hated school with a passion, really didn't like it, and got caught up probably in all the wrong things. Found myself at 16, I'd moved out of home, got into a relationship with someone that was a lot older than me, and that ended up in domestic violence for about 4 years until I got to sort of 20 and realised that, hey, there's got to be a lot better way to live than this. So I left the house and moved to Melbourne and started my life all over again. But yeah, when I got to sort of 23, I thought, I'm getting married, I'm having a child, I think I better go back to school and do something, because otherwise I would have probably just stayed in retail, that sort of area, for the rest of my life. So that's sort of my really short story. Did you want me to elaborate on anything else?
No, that's fine. That's good to know. So how did you get into finance?
I enrolled in TAFE. I just enrolled in my advanced diploma in accounting back in 99. And I had 2 children in 2 years. So while they were little, I just studied and then got a job after I was sort of nearly finished my advanced diploma. I got a job in a small firm in Salisbury in South Australia, and then I continued on, got my degree and got my qualifications as an accountant and then a tax agent as well. So for 14 years I did tax accounting work for individuals and businesses and did all of that fun stuff that lots of people hate doing.
So clearly, Sarah, you are the perfect person to be talking to today.
I hope so. I hope so. I've seen people be really good with money, and I've seen lots of people be really bad with money. And I think a lot of it comes down to education as well. So, but anyway, going back, so for 14 years I did that. In the last couple of years, I've transitioned more into just dealing with and advising business clients on finance, operations, staff, improving their business, growing their business. How do they do that sort of thing? And I've moved more away from the tax stuff because I got to the point where I didn't particularly like doing that either. But I found the coaching stuff much more, I don't know, fulfilling for me anyway. So yeah, I really took an interest in just how people kind of ran their business, how they perceive money as well, because I don't think it really matters how much a business turns over or earns, whether they're a small startup that earns 10 grand a year or a bigger company that turns over 5 million. It's still the way that people sort of think about money, how they treat money, how they, save for money, what they do with money, that is the main issue in, whether we're financially literate or whether perhaps we need a bit of help.
That actually leads me perfectly into my first question for this particular show, Sarah. And it is, the question is, how much or how little you earn, is it a factor as to whether you can budget your money properly? And you've almost already answered that, but can you elaborate on that a little bit more maybe?
Yeah, I think that obviously this is fairly obvious that you want more money coming in than what's going out. Now, whether that's household finances, that's business finances, you want more income coming in than what you're paying your council rates or your water rates or your electricity bill, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that if that's not happening, then clearly we've got to look at our income. But more often than not, it is costs and expenses that are the problem when people get themselves into financial difficulty. From what I see, is that perhaps they don't, and this isn't, but most of the time, is people need less expenses, not more income.
Right, fair enough. So what are the basics that a person might need at the very least to be able to budget successfully, in your opinion? Yeah, so
if we're just taking a normal household budget, let's just take a husband and wife or even a single parent, and they've got 50 grand a year, 100 grand a year, whatever they earn, then obviously they've got to start there. And they've got to go, all right, this is the maximum amount I'm going to get coming into my household. What's the fixed cost? Now, again, this is a sort of an accounting term, and it's perhaps something that's used in business. Do we have fixed and variable costs? But when we're talking about a household budget, fixed costs are things like rent or a mortgage. You can't change that. That's what they are. Electricity and council and water rates. Most of the time, those things are fixed, and you've got to pay them no matter what you earn. The landlord's not going to reduce your rent because you earned less this month, and Simply Energy aren't going to give you a discount because you earned less this month. You see what I mean?
I can attest to that.
Yeah, so they might be able to put you on a payment plan or something, but they're certainly not going to give you a discount based on what you earn. So, and I think perhaps even in business, that's where people don't track their expenses enough, is going, what do we actually need? And again, this is a bit of an accounting term, to break even. What do we need just to cover our basic shopping, rent or mortgage, electricity? What do we need just to run our household? And then we can start factoring in luxury items, if you want to call it that, or disposable income on outings or holidays or stuff like that. But I think people get it the wrong way around. They spend money on those other things first and then hope that they've got the rest for the fixed costs.
And again, that's interesting because that also leads into my next question. So it was, I suppose my question is, does the word budget in itself mean missing out on a lot of the fun things in life that people might say, for instance, eating out or taking your children out to the movies or, concerts, stuff like that?
Yeah, and I actually think that a budget gives you more freedom, because you're more in control of what's being spent. I actually had a conversation the other night with my sister-in-law, and they actually said, now this isn't for everyone, that they'd gone back to taking a set amount of cash out of their bank every week as kind of like their pocket money, so that they didn't just spend on FPOS all the time, because it was out of control. Now I'm not saying that's for everyone, but that's a form of budgeting. In a business, it gives you more freedom because you're more control. Because if you're out of control, I don't think that there's freedom in that. I think that if you're in control, and especially when it comes to money, if you're in control of your money, then you're going to feel like you have got, okay, I've put aside my money for my rent and my mortgage and my bills this week. Now I've got X amount to spend on this, and I don't have to scrimp. So I really believe that budgeting is not something that that takes all the fun out of life. I reckon it can probably put the fun back in life.
Oh,
because
that's
then you
good to
know
know.
exactly where you are.
Well, good to know, and it's good to know by the sounds of it I'm on the right track, because I'm one of those people that takes a bit out each week or puts it aside. So, yay, I must be doing the right thing. Okay, Sarah, so this is an interesting question. What are your thoughts on credit cards?
Well, look, I think credit cards do play a role, and especially if you're a business owner too, because there's a benefit in having, like, for instance, we all know the frequent flyer programs, you know, and I think, like, for me, that's the benefit of a credit card, is that I get linked to Qantas or Virgin or whatever you've got, and you can earn frequent flyers on all of the things that you spend. And if you're a business owner and you've got, you know, lots of purchases and things like that, you can earn those frequent flyer points and put it towards flights. But the trap with a credit card is that you don't pay it off at the end of the month. So then, in general, you would say that most Visas or MasterCards are going to have a 20% interest rate on them. And if you've got 10 grand on that, you know, you're going to start to pay back a whole lot of interest that you shouldn't be. So I think credit cards, you've just got to be wary of them and have them in control. But if it gets to the point where a business or a person's using a credit card to pay bills they don't have money for in the first place, then there's a problem.
Right. So for instance, for our audience, so often when ladies or men have left toxic relationships, you know, they're often forced into maybe having the credit card and racking up a debt, or even some loans just to get the basic needs. So what would you suggest might be the best way to pay these off? And is it even possible, I suppose, to get out of that debt?
Well, again, I think we're going to get back to budget. So even just having like a really simple spreadsheet of, you know, all the money you've got coming in and all that's going out. And if you do have, let's say someone has to leave a situation and they need to spend $5 grand on things for a house or furnishings, whatever, then okay, they've spent that $5 grand, but let's not spend any more. Let's just get ourselves into a situation where we've set ourselves up, and then start making a budget to pay that off over time. And perhaps even a good suggestion might be cut that credit card up, spend what you've got to on it.
Yep.
You have to do it just for a quick fix, but then don't keep spending on it. Just go, right, I'm going to pay that off. I'm going to get to, in 12 months time, I'm going to actually pay that off. But of course, if we pay it off, then add on to it, then pay it off, then add on to it, then we're never going to. And so even sometimes people can get into the trap too of paying minimum repayments, when a bank just goes, okay, this is your minimum. Never pay the minimum, because you'll never ever pay it off.
And I think that is a trap that a lot of us get into as well, isn't it? I mean, I know I have previously, whereas we get so used to having, it's almost fake money at hand.
Yeah.
That it's too easy to pull out the credit card, isn't it?
Yeah. But again, it's, if you're paying for things that you really can't afford and you haven't got the money, then there's going to be a problem with your actual budgeting anyway. And you probably need to look at that.
Yeah. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So if the people listening to this podcast, if they might be tight financially, are there places that you know of that they can go maybe to get financial and or budgeting assistance at all?
Yeah, look, the ones I wrote down were, look, obviously there's My Budget. Now, I'm not going to comment either way on whether I like that or not. I've had a couple of clients over the years use them, and I think they are good for getting people out of trouble. But I think perhaps the education is lacking, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that in a minute. But the other people I know in Adelaide, they're going to get a free plug here, these guys, is Adelaide.
They'll be happy.
And they'll be happy, and I'll tell them I did. Is Adelaide Budgeting, and they are a little local husband and wife team that have created a little business in Adelaide, and I think it's Alyssa and Andrew Mates. And their differentiation, they tell me, from My Budget, is that they actually educate people. So if someone's in, and they do more, this is on the individual scale. So if people are a business, they can come and see me. If people are an individual and they work for wages, etc., then they go to these places. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a differentiation there.
Yeah.
Is that they sort of get hold of people. They don't just pay their bills. They don't just take control of the money. They actually make a budget for people and they educate people on how to get themselves out of the trouble and give them guidelines. Whereas I'm thinking that my budget maybe just sort of take control and they allocate money to debts and things like that. So they're two places that people could go that I know of.
Right. Yeah. I've personally I visited my budget, but I went through, I think, the screening process with them, and maybe I should have, but I didn't take it any further. But maybe I should have. But never mind.
Yes.
So, are there maybe any digital money management apps or programs that you would suggest to our listeners that could assist someone with their budget at all?
I don't know about apps. I'm not, I would say I'm a little bit tech savvy, but not in that degree. I mean, for me, I would just use Excel because I think that Excel is really basic and most people should be able to teach themselves how to use Excel because it just adds things up. But I'm sure that there is, things like if you get, let's say, Money Magazine, for instance, the Paul Clitheroe Money Magazine, get hold of something like that, because there's a whole lot of stuff in those magazines about things like that.
Brilliant.
And they deal with individuals, wage earners, businesses, everything there across. And again, that, because to me, I'm a real advocate for self-educating yourself on finance. Don't just, let's say, if you go to a financial planner or an accountant or a professional, don't just take what they say as gospel. Like, investigate things for yourself. And the way that you get better at money and better at budgeting is by educating yourself on money. And I mean, we're on a podcast now. How many podcasts, YouTubes, money magazines, TV shows even are about finance and money? And the more you educate yourself on it, the better you're going to be at it.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. So, Sarah, is there anything else that you would like to say on the topic of finance today?
I just wanted to finish with the self-education thing, and I'll give you some more examples. Read books. The way that I educated myself, because even being an accountant doesn't necessarily qualify you as everything about money, because in school, when you go to TAFE, when you go to uni, they teach you how to be an accountant, how to do debits and credits and journal entries and use software, and they teach you tax law. But they don't necessarily teach you how to manage money properly. And even in schools, I find that I've got two children now that they're adults, but they didn't learn how to manage money in school because it wasn't a topic that was talked about. Financial literacy was not like a subject. So I think there's a big gap in the market for people to get into schools and educate on finance. But I had to go and educate myself as well. So I sort of started thinking, hang on, I'm not budgeting too well here. My mum and dad were not good business people. They had a history of making bad financial decisions. They got into debt. They put money into a business that wasn't making money and ended up retiring with nothing, basically. So I didn't have a good money story, if you want to call it that, from a young age. I did not have a good example. I didn't have parents that told me to save. I had to actually go and find this stuff out for myself. Yeah. So I started reading, this is only probably 10 years ago, and I'd already been an accountant for 5, is books like Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Tony Robbins' Money Master the Game, and there's numerous other, a Barefoot Investor. Again, read those sort of books. Those books are easy to digest and easy to understand, even if you feel like you're really not a finance person or numbers aren't your thing at all. They're really easy to understand. And so that's what I'd encourage listeners is get some good advice if you need it, educate yourself and get a budget because it is fun.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I have to say, my father was a bookkeeper. And I'm not a numbers person either, but I have listened to things such as the Barefoot Investor, and I'm very simple with my personal budget. I use Excel and it works for me. So I think it's good to know that, as I said, I seem to be on the right track with your advice. So
good. I think good old Excel, people sort of, there's all these apps and things, but really I think Excel can be really good because you know, I mean, you can access it with cloud. We've got OneDrive and Google Drive and iCloud and all that stuff. You can still save Excel and spreadsheets into the cloud and access them on your phone anywhere. And there's something to be said for Excel. I still think that it's good and it's easy.
Stick to the basics, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right, Sarah, well, that's been absolutely brilliant to talk to you today. So thank you very much. If some of our listeners, if they are running their own business and they need to come to you for business advice, where might they be able to find you or get in touch with you?
Okay, so if you're a business or individual and you want tax and accounting advice, you can come and see my husband or my lovely team at equityflair.com.au. If you want some business planning, advice, mentoring, coaching, then come to sarahreimann.com.au.
Excellent.
And we'll be able to help you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That's been absolutely brilliant to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, Ali.
So that was a really interesting chat we just had with Sarah, but what I thought I would do afterwards was just go and do a little bit of my own research on some apps in regards to finance and budgeting in the household itself. So I looked at 4 different apps, and while I'm not going to go deep into what they do, they all pretty much were very, very similar. But they're all free, which is great. So one was called Pocketbook, which was really good, but I found that when I went to connect this to my actual bank account, being that it is like a state credit union, it really only seems to connect with well-known bank accounts or credit unions. So that was a little bit of a downside to that one. But other than that, you could actually set up your own account. It's a manual bank account, so it wasn't that much of a problem really. The other ones I found were all pretty much the same. You just need to take a little bit of time to look around them and educate yourself on how they work, but they're all really, really user-friendly. So the other ones I looked at were Money Manager, Home Budget, and I Save Money. If I have to say which one I personally found the best while I was just playing around, I would say that Home Budget was probably the most user-friendly one that would help you out the most. So I hope that helps you out a bit, ladies. Thank you again to Sarah for being our guest this week. I will speak to you again soon. I hope you enjoyed today's show and thanks for listening. If you would like to share your story of survival or you have a topic you would like to hear about on the program, reach out to me via email welcome@themotivationmama.com or find me, The Motivation Mama, on Instagram or Facebook. And don't forget, the greatest project that you will ever work on is you. Happy day, beautiful.